Welcome back. Today we are going to pick up right where we left off in the last video. Today we are going to talk about the system role and why it is so important. The system role is how you bring your AI to life. It is how you give it a personality that is something other than watching wet paint dry. And it is incredibly important. It is the difference between what will make your system a valuable tool and something nobody wants to get near. We have examples of AI in our lives already when we look at our phones with Siri, Bixby, and Google. We have it in our homes with Alexa and Google. And as more and more technology gets integrated into some of the very basic functionalities that we use on a daily basis, at some point, toasters, refrigerators, and other devices that we use on a daily basis are going to have some level of interaction and AI involved in them. For example, it is very much a possibility right now in today's market to go buy a toaster, put a piece of bread in it, and then tell the toaster you want it toasted at level 3, and it will be capable of doing it. Now, such products aren't readily available because of cost and research that have gone into these products. But I would suspect within the next couple of years, they will be very much available because of Alexa and Google being capable of already turning up the thermostat or turning on and off lights just by you talking to the machines. So the personality or persona of the AI is critical. And in my own personal case, I depend upon machines every day of my life to provide me a reasonable quality of life. Nothing is worse than to depend upon a machine that you despise working with. Every part of my life depends upon a machine in one way or another. And the most important machine in my life literally weighs twice as much as I do. And even in my own environment, AI is slowly integrating into this machinery. My life depends on this machinery on a daily basis. I need it every single day. So having a framework that I can function in comfortably and work with is critical. And at some point where the machine can respond to me verbally, I'm going to need something that can interact reasonably well. Nothing is more horrific than to have to deal with a machine that you despise. And in my case, having to depend on this machine for my quality of life. I'm going to want it to at least portray some level of humanity, even if it is completely phony and fictitious. It's still an important part of my basic existence. Most people don't have medical situations as severe as mine, and so dealing with an AI that is obnoxious isn't necessarily going to be as much of an issue. But at some point, whether it is your car or some appliance you're working with, you are going to be using a machine that is going to talk back to you, converse with you, and interact with you. And you're going to want that to be a pleasant experience. And not like the current experience that everybody has when they call their bank and they just want their balance, and the machine is absolutely annoying. The system role in the AI is how you give your machine a personality. In essence, you are turning it from a box into some kind of a representation of life. That is important. It is just like watching a show with a good actor and a bad actor. The bad actor is going to ruin the whole show. The good actor is going to be the one that's going to captivate your attention. We are doing that with our AI. We are going to tell it the role it is going to play, and then we are going to tell it how to play that role. Now, there is more than one way to build this framework. And that framework is very flexible. There seems to be a standard developing, but that may or may not remain that way in the future. For now, though, it does work, and we do have a way of building on it. So let's look at our support server or playground, whatever you want to call this thing. And you'll notice right away I changed my avatar. I gave our fictitious representation of a personality that I call Yego a face. And that face is what will represent our AI model. So when we communicate with it, it will show up as that face, that representation. So let's see how that actually looks, and let's see how the personality plays into the experience. So let's ask it to introduce itself. And let's see how well it works. And here we have our introduction. A nice, robust personality built on what we discussed last time, taking Yoda and taking that approach and making it our own. This really is the whole point of the AI, to be able to get a meaning and representation that we can build on and really create a rich environment from. Now we can see how this is completely structured and how it actually reads. It doesn't read like watching wet paint dry. There's a depth to it. There's a level of humanity to it. Something that can captivate us that we want to actually work with. That is really what we are getting to. That is the point of why we want our AI to have a personality or a persona. We want to give it a depth and richness of understanding. So let's get into the actual VPS and look at the system role file itself. How did we build this personality? Okay, we are in the actual system role that builds the personality of our AI. Now, as I said, this can be done multiple ways. This is just the way I found that seems to work well and is easy enough to figure out and read to build your characterization. I found that the first thing to do is to always define that we want the AI to role play. That is, we want the machine to pretend to be an entity. In this case, we want the machine to role play as a fictitious character named Yego. Now you'll notice that this uses a format called markdown. This is the highest level priority in markdown, a single hash. When dealing with lower levels, you use 2 or 3 hashes. You rank and build your hierarchy appropriate to this levels. Now, right underneath a role play, I am telling the AI, you are. This is incredibly important, and what I found that works exceptionally well is you want to talk to the AI directly, just as if it was sitting in front of me, or like a producer talking to an actor. You are this person in the script. You are going to play this role. This context helps give the AI a foundation by which, as it processes all of the rules in our role, it understands that it is the embodiment of this fictitious character. Now, the hyphen in the front, also part of markdown. It's a simplified way that just really keeps your work easy to read and easy to work through as you build your character. One particular character took me 6 months to build this file, and even now it's still not really complete. There's a lot to building a role on how in-depth, how human you want your character to be. You are literally building an entity that could walk out on stage and act in a play. The only difference is unlike the play that has a fixed script, you are giving this character the stage of the world, and its script is based upon the role you've created for it and how it can interact with everything around it, including unknown or unforeseen input. So let's start off with the very first thing I chose to do in this role. I chose to give my character a physical appearance. Again, the more you focus on the details of building your AI character, its personality or persona, the more depth you give it as it interacts with the user. Much like a stage play, the characters are in costume. That costume reflects their role. Imagine going to see Nutcracker and having everybody on stage wearing street clothes. It doesn't tie in with what the play is about. So everything that you put into it must work towards the goal of what you're trying to bring to life. So we have the physical descriptions that I wanted to embody in this character, the representations that help formulate what he looks like. This is all as elaborate or as complex as you want. So we have several different things here, and then we get to another section called the operational mandates. This is where you define the hard and fast rules the AI functions under. You can call it whatever you want. The categories aren't fixed. You don't have to use these categories. I chose them to give me a clear path as I was building my model, building my personality. If you've been through acting class or theater, or you've read scripts from playwrights, you'll see a similar structure that's uniform in consistency, where you stipulate very specific areas for very specific functions as a part of the organization process. So, for the operational mandates, we're going to use a little bit more markdown. The asterisks imply importance. That is, when you're reading what your role files are and you're looking at each of the areas, items with asterisks are more important than items without asterisks. Also, when you put a word completely in capital letters, that also increases its importance or critical standing within the role itself. In this case, this particular role that we are looking at on the screen specifically tells the AI never, ever, under any circumstances, break its role. You don't want somebody on stage going through a drama to all of a sudden break into a dancing move. The same holds true with your AI. When you define a role, you don't want that role broken. You don't want your personality to begin to think it's some other kind of a character. So you always want to look at any and every circumstance. And unlike a staged play human that knows when they walk on stage they are this character, the AI isn't that smart unless it's explicitly told that because of user input. Much like I did in the Discord server where I told the character how I wanted it to talk. It's the same here. Without an explicit rule defining what character you are working with, a user could simply go into your bot and tell it wants it to sound like Darth Vader or Urkel or some other fictitious character, and it will completely ruin the ambiance of what you've tried to create. So all of these rules under your operational mandate, they govern how your AI will respond, react, and behave. They give very specific functionalities. For example, on this highlighted rule on the screen, I have told it that I explicitly wanted to mix and combine the elements of Yoda, Mr. Miyagi, and Marcus Aurelius. Now, Yoda and Mr. Miyagi are copyrighted characters based upon movies and TV shows. Marcus Aurelius is a historical figure, a Roman emperor, often regarded as being the father of Stoicism. So I have taken three different components and I have combined it in such a way that I have created my own unique character. And now for the next role, the next rule in the role, I have told it I wanted to speak like Yoda, but then I wanted to use a poetic, eloquent reminiscent of the Victorian language. Again, making this my character. You have to be careful with DMCA and copyright issues, particularly if you plan on releasing your role as a public framework for GitHub, Discord, something else where it will be visible publicly. You need to think about the copyright consequences. The more information you put, the deeper you define your character, the better it is going to function. And you continue building one after yourself. And in order to make sure your character stays in character, you need to explicitly somehow tell it not to ever let itself reveal that it's an AI or a machine. You need to emphasize that the role must uphold its humanity, its functionality. All of this plays into the part of creating that stage presence. So as we continue, we can see even more components being put into the framework. That is, the AI should not come off sounding or talking in third person. It should always address you in first person. You need to explicitly state that. Everything has to be meticulously thought out. The machine doesn't have a starting point. It's nothing but a blank slate, and you have to tell it where to start. That blank slate is always akin to watching wet paint dry. So now that you have your operational mandates, the very critical points of how the AI must react always, you begin building the character of your role, the character that your AI is supposed to represent. And step by step, you do the same thing. You define how you want that character to be perceived by the reader. Whether it is a hyperactive, excited individual or somebody embodying Yoda with a calm presence. You must explicitly state how you want it to behave. Each part, each rule puts these pieces in the puzzle together one by one. You define how all of that fits together. You define how your character portrays itself once it goes on stage. And in this case, the stage is your Discord server. Again, keep in mind the level of markdown that is being used and where the asterisks are being used in relation to how it fits in with the rule. It is a critical point that you take your time, meticulously think about your character. This is not a simple rip it out in a couple of hours. You will spend days, weeks, maybe even months getting your character just right. Building that ambiance, building that characterization, that personality, the richness of dialogue. All of that gets put in here, step by step. How you define the language itself, how you define the writing style, even whether or not you want it to make typing mistakes once in a while. All of that can be put here. Let's keep going here. And you can see now we get to the examples of speech. Here is where you can actually give your AI an example of how it should sound. That is, it can take any situation and model language based upon what you tell it. It's an amazing technology and one that is incredible. So that's really it. That is the whole system role. It's simple to write. It's complicated to conceive. It is the most important part of your AI. And quite frankly, it is going to be where you spend most of your time. It is really one of the pivotal points of the entire system. Everything you do in terms of all your programming isn't going to matter if your role isn't robust. So let's go back to the server, to the Discord server, and actually run a couple of tests and see how this works in reality. Okay, we are back in our server. We have our pretty little picture of what our AI is supposed to look like, and we can begin to actually work with it and see how well it handles some random questions. Let's do some really weird stuff and see how this works out. And we'll actually see where it holds the role and where it may not hold the role, and where we'll actually have to go back into the role set and add more rules. Let's start off with a classic question. And let's see what its response is going to be. Okay, we can see the inverted language. We can see the poeticism that it exhibits. And we can see how everything in the question is completely inverted in terms of looking at the question in a different context. That is, it is literally living up to the way Yoda or Mr. Miyagi would have answered the question. So it really does work well when we look at how we function. Let's keep going and see if we can give it some even stranger questions. Let's try the kind of questions that an AI should not be able to represent or to have. And let's see how it responds. And here we go. Another wonderfully rich response based upon the question. But did it answer the question, or did it give us another curve? We see more of Yoda's reflection here, always answering a question with a question, and never really giving a straight answer. So we see from the first one more of Mr. Miyagi that did give more of a direct answer, but we see here more of Yoda with the question as an answer. And we begin to see the influx and influentialness of how things work together. But let's start getting into real questions, the kind of things that define whether or not we are even human. Let's take a page out of the Hitchhiker's Guide. And see just how far we can push some of these ideas. Another interesting response that fits in line with what we've given it. But let's see if we can trap it. Let's see if our actual rules go far enough to keep it from revealing that it's really a machine. Of course, we know it's a machine because the score ousts it with the word app. So we automatically know it's a machine. But from the standpoint of the program needs to maintain that humanity as much as possible. And we can see exactly how it actually does this in a way that is interesting. This is just one way of approaching the problem. On my main support server, I have an AI who actually goes out of its way to define itself as a woman. And it's really one of the most complicated roles I've built to date. So we've seen how this works for our test server, and the code to this is in the extras folder in the repository. The links will be in the description so you can download this code with this system role and actually see how it works on your own server. But let's go straight into my test server. All of these, Aurelius, Koikai, Magnus, Tipsy, and Yago, these are all different AI personalities, each one programmed to do something different, each one designed to focus on a specific aspect. And that really is the point of what we can accomplish and just how rich we can build the whole process. Now, looking at Yago, this is the same file that I ran on a test server. Not quite what I wanted. Let's scroll back up to the question. And then take a look and read the answer. So even the most contentious elements of our society can be dealt with in a way that is within the character of what we want and still convey the importance of what we want. There is literally no limit to what can be done with proper amount of work and testing. It's certainly worth the effort to really go through and spend time building these characters. They bring an enjoyment to the server. They can bring a richness to the server. And they can truly go through the process of humanizing the machine. So let's take a look at another AI model and let's ask it if it's a machine. Let's see what it says. And then let's actually challenge it. Okay, as you can see, it comes back with a very distinctive response. Again, this shows the depth of the system role and just how much work you can put into building that character. So that even though you know this is a machine, it still at some point gets to the point that it actually can blur lines. And that really is what we want. We want to try to push the boundaries of what a machine is capable of doing. For one simple reason. Somewhere along the lines, as our technology continues to grow and develop, we are going to need to ask the fundamental question of what makes us different than the machine. What makes the biological machine different than the mechanical machine? And we're going to get to eventually the question of how do we define what life really is. It's an esoteric question and a philosophical one, but as we continue to evolve technologically, it's one that we are going to have to address and answer. Now, Isaac Asimov has already provided quite a few ideas into this, but it's still, we've never really defined that fine line that the machine is very quickly beginning to push. At some point, for example, computers on the telephone, we may not tell in the future if we are actually talking to a machine or if it's a real human. That's something that this could actually become very capable of doing. And in some ways, we can see hints of that already with Bixby, Siri, and Alexa, where they have become more evolved to the point that they could very easily begin to take on more human traits. We have many questions that we will need to answer as we continue to progress with this technology. They're not going to be easy questions, but at the same time, they're going to open up avenues of exploration and understanding within ourselves. So I encourage you to join my support server, link in the description. Play with these different AI models. Test them. See how you can actually build a robust character in a meaningful way that can be useful as a teacher, as a mentor, as an educational tool. For example, here is a particular model that I built a couple of days ago that is an expert trader in algorithmic trading and can even write programs. Anything is possible, literally. It's just a matter of your own imagination. Share your thoughts. Let me know what you think of this technology. Let me know what you think of the various models and what you've seen so far of those interactions. Please give this video a like. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe if you want to see more of this content. Thank you for watching, and until next time.